بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أهلا وسهلا بكم مجددا. التقينا أمس مع محور المناظرة أداة تعليمية، وكما قلنا في بداية جلسة الأمس أن هناك العديد من المقاربات والعديد من الأدوات والمناهج في تعليم اللغات واكتساب اللغات، والمناظرة هي أحد هذه الأدوات. لدينا في اليوم الثاني لأعمال المؤتمر 5 تقديمات، وهذا الحقيقة هو أكثر من عدد أمس. كان لدينا فقط 3 أمس، فمعنى ذلك أن الوقت المعطى لكل متحدث سيقل بنسبة 5 دقائق، فلدينا 15 دقيقة لكل متحدث. إن شاء الله سيلتزموا بهذا الوقت الممنوح لهم. بعد ذلك، بعد الانتهاء من التقديمات، سيكون هناك أسئلة. نفتح الحوار لأسئلة الجمهور والحضور. كما ذكرت في البداية، عنوان الجلسة المناظرة أداة تعليمية، ولدينا 5 تقديمات. المتحدث الأول اللغة ستكون يعني سواء كانت الأسئلة أو التقديمات ستكون باللغة العربية أو الإنجليزية كما تشاءون، ولكن إذا التزمت بلغة التزم للآخر، لأن ذلك يمثل مشكلة للمترجم إذا يعني انتقلت من لغة لأخرى. فإذا اخترت التحدث باللغة العربية استمر في اللغة العربية، إذا اخترت التحدث باللغة الإنجليزية استمر في اللغة الإنجليزية. المتحدث الأول لدينا هو بجواري عن يميني الأستاذ ستيف. أين ذهب اسمك يا ستيف؟ ستيف يانو. ده اسم اسباني. اسبانيش، يا سلام. يانو. والأستاذ ستيف هو أستاذ مشارك في البلاغة في جامعة سان جون، ويكتب في مجال المناظرة والخطاب والبلاغة، وهو مؤخرا أصبح مديرا لدورية جديدة بعنوان دراسات في المناظرة والخطاب. وطبعا هذه دعاية غير مدفوعة الأجر يعني لدورية ستيف. ستيف سيكلمنا اليوم عن تصنيف المناظرة بوصفها لعبة أو لعبة. العنوان في اللغة الإنجليزية هو أوضح من العنوان باللغة العربية. What kind of game is debate؟ هذا يمكن يكون أكثر وضوحا لكن اختار عنوان تصنيف المناظرة بوصفها لعبة. لديك يا ستيف 15 دقيقة على الأكثر. يجب أن تأخذ الميكروفون وتذهب إلى البوديوم، وموفق إن شاء الله. عفوا.
I will start with where I started thinking about this project, with the work of Jane McGonigal, who gave this great TED Talk about game design, video game design. She's a video game designer. And she wrote a very popular and very best-selling book. This best-selling book is called Reality is Broken. In this book, she details the idea that all social problems and all political problems could be easily solved if we design them to be like a game. Because gamers will never give up the game. They will do, as we call in slang in the US, the grind. And I didn't move forward with this. It got me thinking about a very old question that I've encountered in my research before, which is the question that obsessed the early professionalization of speech communication in the United States for maybe the first 10 to 15 years of the field in the early 20th century. Every editorial, everything from about 1914 through 1918 is about whether debate should be classified as a game. Is debate a game? Is this metaphor a good game or not? Is this a good way to think about debate, or are we losing something by calling it a game? And that's the question I return to, but in the spirit of this conference of dialogue and debate, I will reverse my earlier position. You can go read my earlier position in my other work if you want to, but I will say maybe we should think of debate as a game, but we need a better metaphor. The only metaphor we have for debate as a game now is like football, basketball, tennis, a Swiss-style tournament. That's the only kind of game we have as sport. What if we could imagine another kind of game? Maybe we could imagine a game that is very complex and technical, and that would benefit us educationally. Maybe we could imagine a game that has multiple perspectives and multiple ways to solve it. Or maybe we could imagine a game that's focused around getting us to talk to each other at a deeper level. These are the three metaphors I will share with you, not to be conclusive or to tell you what debate is, but instead to get our imaginations going about the power we have when we teach with debate and how we are beholden to no format. We can design something that will inspire and educate. So let's get started with my first metaphor, which comes from the novel, Hermann Hesse's novel, The Glass Bead Game, or Magister Ludi in German. This novel has a lot of detail to it, but I will tell you that the basic story of it, the spoiler alert, cover your ears if you want to read it and you don't want to be spoiled, cover your ears. It's about a utopian society that's based on academic research, and they play a game with small glass beads on a board where they try to connect all human knowledge together. So what they will do is they say, this arrangement of these beads is an astronomical formula, and then the other player will say, no, it reminds me of a Beethoven sonata. And they say, oh, actually, no, this is a poetic verse from the famous ancient poet, whoever. And this is the game they play, and it is communicated to students that this is the height of intellectual achievement, is to be the master of this game. One student, Joseph Knecht, rises to the ministerial position of game master in the country, and he finds himself incredibly dissatisfied. He's dissatisfied with the limits of this game because it doesn't permit him to impact the kind of change that he wants to do. So he ends up leaving his top ministerial post and leaving the perfect academic society and going out to be a simple teacher. Now this game makes me think of a debate that is very restrictive, which is not something we would automatically want to endorse. We want something freeing, imaginative, but I would say this kind of debate is a debate that doesn't pretend to be more than it is. It's a game that inspires you to move beyond debating, to go and do something else, because debating is fun, but at some point becomes kind of childish. It's like a toy that one has to abandon at some point. It should be designed with frustrating top-down rules that can't be changed or altered no matter how persuasive you are. And informal debating about, do you like this game? Why can't we change the rules? Is kind of vital to the discussion about it. You see this in the novel as well. And it problematizes a very quick and easy solution to the issues debated. Oh, we'll just have the government provide more funding. Oh, okay, great. And the details of it can't be handled. So the advantages of this kind of game, I will contrast with a popular activist movement in the United States called Braver Angels, which is the opposite of what I'm talking about here for contrast. Braver Angels is an organization that says they will solve the blue and red divide in the United States by saying, let's all get together like this room. Everyone will offer their point of view and their position, and they are not trying to persuade you. In fact, it is forbidden that they try to change your mind. And it is forbidden for you to question what they are saying. You are to accept it and clap. Now, what is the result of this kind of a game of debate? Everyone is very comfortable with what they brought. No one takes anything away. And nobody thinks twice about their political position. This seems to be more harmful than helpful if we're thinking about debate as education. But this is so much more popular than the strict model of debate that the Glass Bead Game encourages us to think about. The Braver Angels reminds me of maybe having a potluck dinner. This is kind of an American thing. I don't know if this is cross-cultural, where everyone brings a dish to share. This is the kind of potluck dinner where everyone brings their favorite food. They have 3 bites of it. They pack it up and take it with them. It makes very little sense to me. Why not make a debate that's frustrating where people are uncomfortable, because then debate will have that missing connection that all of us as teachers probably get frustrated with, is a student who is very good at debate, very obsessed with debate, but then doesn't really make that next step into organization, into doing something for the community, into that next further step. If debate is limited, it might say, look, you have to do more than just talk about it. So this is the first model. Our second model makes me think about this older movie called Inception, Leonardo DiCaprio movie, about a guy who is hired to enter people's minds to steal their deepest secrets and then sell them, like corporate espionage, but through going into somebody's mind. It's a weird science fiction movie. But he gives a test to his colleagues of, say, I need you to construct a maze in 30 seconds that will take me more than 1 minute to solve. And this is the test he gives in the movie. And this brings up a classical figure of the labyrinth, which appears in all kinds of myth, all kinds of story, all kinds of narrative across culture. And that's the second one I want to talk about, is the labyrinth, and a form of debate that is about accepting and understanding perspective. Very different than the Glass Bead Game. So labyrinths have many different forms. I found an amazing book, an amazing scholar named Penelope Reed Dube, who has written a book about labyrinths from the ancient world, from ancient Greece, all the way through medieval times. And it's fascinating to me. And she gives us 4 terms that I have here on the screen that I will talk about thinking about our design of labyrinth. First, labyrinths can be of two types, multicursal or unicursal. What does this mean? Multicursal means that the maze is there to deceive, it's there to trick, it's there to encourage you to make wrong turns and have to start over. Unicursal is not this way. Unicursal is no matter which way you turn, you will end up at the goal. And usually this is sort of a European model of a labyrinth, where at the middle there will be a beautiful garden. And you'll make it to the garden, but it's about the path you walk. And you do have choices, but each choice will still lead you to the center of the garden. But it's about walking and deciding, maybe I'll go this way. What will I see? What will I think about? Is this very long or short? This kind of reflection. The other 2 terms are about the labyrinth itself. The bivia are the decisions that one makes, which way to turn. And this is a reflection that we have with our students when we use debate and education of, like, which way will you go in constructing a case? How will you respond to this? Those decisions. And the labyrinth model says these decisions about what choice to make, as far as the arguments that you will offer in the debate, is the important educational point. This is where the pedagogy is. Because you say, why did you turn that way and not go the other way? Not were you right or did you have the facts, but what informed that decision? And then they can reflect on their own thinking processes, which I think is something missing from a lot of articulation of critical theory and debate today. The ambage is the last word, and the ambage is the passageway. Ambages can take you on very long routes. They feel like a lot of walking. They feel very long, very frustrating. But while you're moving through this, or moving through the arguments, or moving through the research, you might say, why? Why am I doing this? That's an important question. What does all this mean for me? It's a very important question. So in structuring this kind of debate, the advantage for labyrinthine debate, or labyrinth debating, is that you get a debate format or a debate practice for education that allows students to see 2 perspectives simultaneously. So at the top here, we have the model. I don't think this works, but the top one is the model of the labyrinth at Crete with the Minotaur and Theseus there. And this is a labyrinth that's designed to keep a monster trapped. This is a multicursal labyrinth where you get lost very easily. The bottom is more of a Roman labyrinth, which has the bivia and has the images, but it looks like you will end up at the center no matter which way you decide to go. So it's more unicursal. Looking at this labyrinth, you can see the challenges that the walker of the labyrinth faces, but at the same time appreciate the overarching view. So this is a great way to think about creating debate for your course, where you're going through an extant body of literature, maybe a debate across the literature or lots of different theory that you want to educate the students about, and you want them to see how complex those pathways were that researchers went, and then get them that first-person view of what would it be like to be that researcher moving through this data, making choices. Why would you choose one way or another? In the full paper, I talk more about teaching history as a wonderful way for this model of debate to work, because you can share the primary documents and the first-person accounts of the historical event, and then the students get a sense of, they know what happened, they can see the whole map of it, and then they get a real appreciation and sympathy for the person who had to walk through that material, walk through that time, exist in that space. So this is, I think this is a form of debate I want to study more, because the idea of holding 2 perspectives at once, like appreciating the complexity of the issue and the choices, and appreciating the first-person subjective view of walking through the maze, is very powerful, I think. And the final one is Squiggle Debate. Squiggle Debate. This comes from the work of D.W. Winnicott, who's a British physician, in psychoanalytic thing. He studied with Melanie Klein, who was one of Sigmund Freud's students. And he wanted to do child therapy, but he could not get children to speak to him. They're very shy, they don't want to talk, they want their parent there. So what he did was he invented a game to get children to talk with him. He called it the Squiggle Game, and I'm borrowing it to invent Squiggle Debate. This might be too small to read, but this is him discussing how he puts it together. I will read this out loud of how he does his Squiggle Game. I have a table between the child and myself with paper and 2 pencils. First, I take some of the paper and tear the sheets in half, giving the impression that what we are doing is not frantically important. And then I begin to explain. I say, this is a game that I like playing, has no rules. I just take my pencil and go like that. He makes a line. And I probably screw up my eyes and do a squiggle blind. I go on my explanation and say, you show me if it looks like anything to you, or if you can make it into anything. And afterwards, you do the same for me, and I can see if I can make something of yours. So they're taking turns making lines on the piece of paper, and then they talk about what they're making, which opens up the conversation. So how would Squiggle Debate work? Well, his theory of transitional phenomena, I think, can be, if you're familiar with Winnicott, this is the idea of the child who has the blanket or the toy that they do not want to part with, and they use for everything, or they play with the spoon and try to feed you. This is Winnicott's theory of creativity. Children should engage in these games because they're seeing the limits of their power and what they can influence. So transitional object, maybe we can have transitional discourse. When we teach debate to students, we are showing them it's okay to play with words and to play with arguments, like a minister or a politician or some figure like that. It's okay to do this. Let's test and get familiar with this because that will help them into a world of polarized views, people who don't listen, and urgent topics that need to be discussed. This would be good practice. He also talks about the importance of play, which is having an experience that is pleasurable, but having that experience where it's interactive as well. You're not just going to a concert, you're interacting with your whole body in the concert is what he talks about. And culture is how do you insert yourself into a body of literature, writing, or thought that has existed from before you were born? How do you insert yourself into that? And that's the question of culture, and he says the transitional objects help with that. So what does this kind of debate look like? What it would be, here's a squiggle from Winnicott's work, is that we have lines of argument. So this would be a debate where there's no topic, and someone just starts speaking, and they say, well, I think this is an issue. Now the other speaker then has to draw a line that connects with that to try to make something. Well, that makes me think of this. And eventually they say, well, maybe we're debating about this. And it moves forward like that. So what this does is it reveals topics that even on our best days, we wouldn't really think of as debatable topics or topics that would be productive educationally. But what it does is get the students speaking, very low stakes. They just have to offer a line, respond with another line, and then together they draw a picture or they create lines of argument. And if something is unclear, if a student tries to make these lines into an image that is unclear or it seems like they're stretching or faking it a bit, they can say, what do you mean? I don't see that. And they can sort of inquire about it. So this is a good way to take lots of information and put it into relationship with each other and let the students kind of drive the car, so to speak. So those are my 3 initial ideas about metaphors or ways to think about game and debate. This is a very old question, and many people have written about it in the history of teaching debate in the United States. But I think that the thing that they have missed is the power that we have to imagine metaphors of what debate can be, what it can do for our students, what it can do for us, and what it can do for our classroom. I appreciate your attention, and I look forward to your questions. Yeah, of course, yeah, at the end. I look forward to your questions later.
شكرا لستيف. الحقيقة أنا يعني لم أرد أن أوقفه عن الاستمرار ولكن الوقت يعني واهم شيء انتبهت ليه يعني او الجزء الرئيسي اللي في تقديم ستيف مساله اذا اعتبرنا ان الديبيت واعتبرناه واخذناه على محمل جد انها ممكن ان تكون لعبه فهذه اللعبه لها اصول يعني اصول منهجيه واصول تربويه ولا بد ليس اعتباطا ان نعتبر ان مجرد لعبة. إذا اعتبرناها لعبة فعلا فهي لها أصول. فهذا مهم جدا ونقطة رئيسية في كلام ستيف. ونحن محظوظون أيضا لأن لدينا تنوع كبير اليوم في الجلسات في الجلسة.
لدينا كل أنواع المقاربات موجودة في التقديمات.